entitled Mom Demands I Lie About Her Son's Harassment Case. As an 8th grade teacher, I had a disturbing situation unfold a few months back. One of my female students confided in me privately, revealing that a male classmate was sexually harassing her. She presented me with text messages he'd sent, detailing incredibly graphic sexual acts he wanted to commit against her. She also recounted inappropriate comments he'd made in the hallways. She explained she'd repeatedly asked him to stop, but his behavior persisted, and she sought my help to keep him away from her in class. Before officially reporting the matter and involving school guidance and administration, I dedicated a class period to observe their interactions discreetly. Once I was actively looking, I noticed the male student engaging in unsettling behaviors, licking his lips while looking at her from across the room, lingering around her personal space, and creating excuses to walk past her desk. I also personally overheard him making a sexually charged comment about her to another student. Based on these observations, I proceeded to report the boy to administration for sexual harassment and contacted both students' parents to inform them of the school's investigation and potential disciplinary actions. I didn't directly speak with the boy's mother, but left a voicemail requesting her to call me back at her earliest convenience. The following day, during my planning period, the office called to inform me that a parent had arrived for a meeting. Our school policy mandates scheduled parent meetings logged with the office beforehand. I hadn't scheduled any meetings for that day. However, I had some free time, so I decided to go to the office and see what was happening. It turned out to be the male student's mother. She politely requested a face-to-face conversation about the situation. For reasons I now regret, I agree, even though standard protocol usually involves having another staff member present during parent meetings. We moved to a conference room, and I explained the allegations in general terms, without mentioning names. I informed her that a female student had accused her son of sexual harassment and that I had witnessed enough concerning behavior in class to warrant an official investigation. Newland, what exactly did you hear? Because I know my son, he would never harass a girl. He might say something silly that was misinterpreted, but that's simply not his nature. So precisely what did you hear him say? I need to know what this girl is claiming about him. I observed him licking his lips in her direction and overheard him say to another boy that he wanted to ride that ass all night. What do you mean, licking his lips? He gets chapped lips. It might not be directed at some girl. She can't just make accusations about him and try to ruin his life. I know my son, and he's not that kind of person, regardless of what some girl says. Well, administration and guidance will conduct an investigation and they will contact you based on their findings. So wait, what did you tell them? You can't just go around saying boy's name is harassing girls based on one person's word. He's already been suspended twice and now you're going to get him expelled just because some girl wants to cause him trouble for no reason? At this point, I was regretting my decision to meet alone. The mother was becoming agitated, I was alone, and my next class was starting soon. I reiterated that I had only reported the girl's statements and my observations and that an investigation would follow. I emphasized that I wasn't the decision maker and that she should address any concerns with the principal directly. Well, principal's name hates son's name. She won't listen. You need to go and tell them that this is all nonsense. You saw him licking his lips because they were chapped. I won't stand for all this harassment nonsense. Again, if you have concerns, I'm not the person to discuss them with. I only reported what I witnessed. They will investigate. But you didn't see anything and you need to tell them that. I'm telling you, I know my son, and you've got this all wrong. If he gets expelled because you don't know what you saw, it will be your fault. I eventually managed to de-escalate the situation enough for her to leave. I then reported to administration that the parent had become hostile regarding the accusations and continued with my day. Ultimately, the school investigated and uncovered substantial evidence that he had sexually harassed not just one, but 3 different girls. The boy was subsequently expelled. Wow, talk about denial. This mom is living in a fantasy world. It's like she thinks reality will bend to her will just because she demands it. Hit that subscribe button if you've seen this level of delusion before. Entitled Family Demands Wi-Fi, Insults Great-Grandparent, and Pays 20 times the menu price. Good day, Reddit. Before I begin, please consider a few points. This story occurred in northern Spain, specifically Asturias, so I'll provide cultural context to minimize any misunderstandings. Also, this is my first time posting in this community, and lastly, I am Spanish, so please excuse any spelling or grammar mistakes. Feel free to point them out if you wish. This story became much longer than I anticipated. It deserves an extra large tag. Let's dive into some background information first. Feel free to skip this and go straight to the story if you prefer. This happened several years ago when I was 17 and used to spend summers helping out at my grandpa's restaurant. The restaurant was on the ground floor of our family home in a tiny village of about 30 residents. My great-grandparents, my mom's maternal grandparents, lived upstairs. In the restaurant, my great-grandmother and grandma were the chefs, while my great-grandfather and grandpa managed the front of house and served tables. It was a small place with around 8 tables seating 4 inside, and we could set up a couple more outside if the weather was nice. The restaurant also functioned as a bar frequented by locals, many of whom were retired and would spend their days playing cards and enjoying beer or wine. Despite its small size and remote location, the restaurant was usually bustling, especially in the summer. It's important to know that my great-grandparents established this restaurant in 1941, so it was a long-standing, reputable establishment in the community. I'm proud to say they were much loved in the area, genuinely wonderful people. Although the village was quite isolated, we typically received about 4 to 5 tourist groups per week during the summer. My brother and I were assigned to serve these tables as we were the only ones who spoke languages other than Spanish. Our opening hours at the time were from 12 p.m. to 10:30 p.m., but the kitchen was only open for lunch from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and for dinner from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. We offered a set menu consisting of a starter, 2 main courses, dessert, and cider or water for €10. Now for the story itself. For clarity, I'll use these abbreviations: EM for entitled mother, EF for entitled father, SK for spoiled kid around 7 years old, GGP for great grandparent, and M for me. It was around 4 p.m. and most customers had finished eating and were relaxing with coffee or liquor. My grandparents and great-grandparents were just starting their meal, as they always waited until all customers were served. My brother and I were still on duty, ready to assist anyone who wanted another drink. Suddenly we heard a car pull up outside and I could hear a woman speaking loudly in English. As soon as they entered, the following unfolded. We would like a table. X from the Y Hotel told us this was a fantastic place to eat. I'm very sorry, madam, but the kitchen is currently closed as it is quite late for lunch service. Yes, it's late because we got lost on these dreadful roads. Is it really so difficult to put up proper road signs? And we have a small child who is very hungry. Oh, I apologize for the inconvenience. Let me see if there's anything we can do. I went inside and explained the situation to my grandma, who told me to accommodate them since most of the food was already prepared and it would just require reheating. Well, are you going to give us a table or not? If the kitchen is closed, how is it that those people are eating? She pointed towards my grandparents who were having their meal. At the time, I assumed she was behaving rudely because she was hungry and I wasn't accustomed to dealing with impolite tourists, as most were usually very respectful. Those are the owners so they can eat whenever they wish. I said this with a slight chuckle. Anyway, I've just checked with them and you will be able to eat too. Please, follow me to your table. They followed me to a table and I explained that we only had the set menu available. They exchanged a strange look but seemed to accept it. I brought bread and a bottle of water to their table. They began devouring the bread, which seemed to confirm my initial theory that their rudeness was simply hunger-induced. As soon as I served the starter, the EF immediately demanded the Wi-Fi password. EF: Hey, we noticed you have a Wi-Fi network here. What's the password? Yes, we do have Wi-Fi. However, it is for staff use only. We had a limited, very slow internet connection with a 5 gigabyte data cap, which my grandpa used to read online newspapers and my brother and I used for messaging friends. The ACNUF. That's nonsense. We are paying customers and we deserve access to your Wi-Fi. Yes, our little angel wants to watch some videos. We don't have any internet access here. I apologize, but as I said, it's for staff, personal use only. That's simply not right. This would be unacceptable in America. Well, I'm sorry to inform you, but we are not in America. The EM said something to the SK and he started running around the restaurant, stomping his feet and yelling loudly. My great-grandfather approached me and asked what was happening. I quickly explained the situation and he asked me to translate what he was about to say. Gigi, madam, please control your child or I will have to ask you and your family to leave. Don't you dare tell me how to raise my child, you dinosaur. F, don't get near my child, you old creep. By this point, everyone in the restaurant was staring in disbelief at these appalling individuals. I hesitated for a moment but translated everything to my great-grandfather, anticipating a negative reaction. Instead of saying anything further, he slowly turned around and gestured to two men sitting at another table, silently indicating they should remove the family from his restaurant. I then explained to the family that if they did not leave immediately, those two men, who happened to be off-duty Guardia Civil officers, Spanish Royal Police, would escort them out. They seemed to doubt that the men were policemen and refused to leave until they were served their meal. Finally, both men stood up, displayed their official badges, and politely but firmly asked them, in their best English, to leave the premises. EM, EF, and SK finally stood up and began to leave. However, as they were exiting, the policemen noticed that they had parked their rental car directly in front of our garage, completely blocking it, in a clearly marked no parking zone. The officers decided to ask for their rental car documents, took several photos, and issued them a €200 fine for obstructing a private garage entrance. Okay, this story ended up being much longer than I expected. I want to add that I have family in the USA, and all the Americans I've met there have been lovely people. Please don't interpret this as an anti-American post. I hope you all have a great day. Witnessed an entitled mom get shut down in spectacular fashion. I had a truly unforgettable experience on the metro today that I just have to share. It was pure comedic gold. The metro wasn't overly packed, but all the seats were taken. Still, there was plenty of standing room without feeling crammed. There was this kid sitting in one of the priority seats. You know, the ones reserved for people with disabilities, pregnant individuals, and seniors. Definitely not meant for parents of toddlers. He looked to be around 14 or 15 years old, just your average teenager. He's the unsung hero of this whole saga. Then at one stop in storms our entitled mom. She had a young child in tow, a cute little one struggling to keep up with her hurried pace. EM immediately spotted our teenage hero sitting in the priority seat and just glared at him. I guess this was her go-to tactic to guilt trip people into giving up their seats automatically. The kid, however, remained unmoved. This clearly annoyed EM because she started marching towards him with purpose in her stride. She reached him, stopped right in front, and doubled down on the glaring. Again, the kid didn't even flinch. That's when she unleashed the verbal fury. If she hadn't already grabbed everyone's attention in the carriage, she certainly did now. She started loudly berating the teenager for sitting in a reserved seat and not offering it to someone more deserving, like herself, a mother with a young child. Her logic was baffling, as those seats aren't even designated for parents. She just kept ranting and raving, trying to rally support from the other passengers. For a brief moment, some people seemed to be siding with her. Then in a move that nobody saw coming, the teenager calmly rolled up the right leg of his jeans. He then proceeded to detach a prosthetic leg and place it directly in front of the utterly speechless EM. The expression on her face was absolutely priceless, and she looked like a mixture of utter mortification and intense embarrassment. Without a word, she just backed away slowly, completely defeated. And then she actually got off at the very next stop. I highly doubt that was her intended destination. The entitlement is off the charts. She thought motherhood was a VIP pass to priority seating. Teen's response, prosthetic leg, mic drop, perfection. Fee. Parents expect me to forfeit college fund for sick child they can't afford. I'm 19 years old and the second child in my family. I have 3 brothers aged 21, 13, and 7, and a 16-year-old sister. We grew up in poverty, and our parents frequently relied on financial assistance from relatives and friends to raise us. This was because, despite my dad having a modest job and my mom not working, they continued to have child after child. My parents are deeply religious and believe children are gifts from God. Personally, I think that's nonsense. My parents' reproductive decisions wouldn't bother me so much if they hadn't negatively impacted my siblings and my lives. Growing up, we never had new clothes or toys. We had to accept hand-me-downs from wealthier family members. We never went on outings or enjoyed any leisure activities. To make matters worse, we were acutely aware that the rest of the family looked down on us for constantly needing handouts. Now my older brother and I have managed to get accepted into good universities and are looking forward to a future significantly better than our parents. We were both temporarily living at our parents' home due to the COVID-19 lockdown. One morning my parents gathered all 5 of us in the living room. Mom announced she had wonderful news. The smile that had begun to form on my face vanished instantly when she declared, "We're pregnant." I completely lost my composure. I questioned how they could be so irresponsible and foolish. Did they not already have enough financial burdens without bringing another child into the world? My older brother attempted to calm me down, but I was furious. After a lifetime of deprivation due to my parents' irresponsibility, they still hadn't learned anything. I asked them how they planned to provide for another child. My dad's response was to tell me that I would have to give them the money our great uncle had left me. He had left a sum of money to each of us 5 children, accessible only when we turned 18. I vehemently refused. That money was earmarked for my college expenses. He accused me of being selfish and not supporting my family. I retorted that if they couldn't afford the child, they should consider an abortion. My mom burst into tears, calling me a heartless monster. Dad said he was disgusted with me. I reiterated that there was absolutely no way I was going to fund their irresponsibility, and the only thing I would consider paying for was a termination. My real concern was for my siblings' lives potentially becoming even harder. My older brother and I had managed to escape our parents' cycle of poverty, but the younger ones, especially my 16-year-old sister, would undoubtedly be expected to help care for this new baby. No teenager deserves to have their adolescence overshadowed by diapers and a constantly crying infant. I knew firsthand what that was like, as I had been forced to be an unpaid nanny to my younger siblings. My older brother was allowed to socialize with friends and enjoy his youth, while I was stuck at home, bathing and feeding toddlers. I decided to involve other family members, hoping they could reason with my parents. I called my mom's maternal cousin, one of my favorite relatives. When I told her about my parents' pregnancy, her immediate reaction was, "What? Against?" I explained everything, including their expectation for me to surrender my inheritance. She promised to speak with my parents and advised me not to sign over any money. I assured her I wouldn't, and I meant it. I also contacted 2 of my first cousins, one of whom is an accountant. I asked her to explain to my parents the significant financial strain this baby would create, and to try and persuade them to consider either abortion or adoption. I moved out of my parents' house a few days later. Initially, I had only planned to stay there until the lockdown eased, but I simply couldn't endure my mom's constant nagging about how this baby is a blessing and that I want to kill it. I've moved into a friend's basement, paying a minimal rent. My mom's cousin visited them about a week ago and tried to explain that they weren't doing this child any favors by bringing it into a life of poverty. My mom was incredibly rude to her, saying that a woman who chose to remain barren would never understand a mother's love. My aunt never wanted children and is one of the reasons I admire her so much. My dad told her to leave. My aunt later told me that there was nothing more she could do, but she had tried. I didn't blame her. The accountant cousin also attempted to explain the economic impact of another child, but my mom just cried about how everyone was trying to take away her baby, completely missing the point. The intervention was utterly ineffective, so I've decided to cut off contact with my parents. I simply can't bear to watch my family sink further into a disastrous situation. I will maintain contact with my 16-year-old sister to ensure my parents can't brainwash her. My older brother will remain in contact with everyone, which is helpful as he can act as a link between me and the other siblings if my parents try to forbid them from speaking to me. Otherwise, I'm done with them. College fund? Gone. Future on hold, and they call her selfish? The audacity. Have you ever seen parents this delusional? Tell me your stories in the comments. EM force feeds fish to prove my allergy is fake. I have a fish and seafood allergy. Thankfully, it's not the life-threatening anaphylactic kind, so consuming it won't be fatal. However, it does lead to unpleasant consequences, vomiting, a terrible stomach ache, and a pounding headache that lasts for hours. If I ingest a significant amount, I also develop itchy red hives all over my arms. My mother, however, refused to believe my allergy was real. As a child, I lacked the assertiveness to effectively challenge her. She would frequently force me to eat dishes containing fish or seafood, insisting it was to prove I wasn't actually allergic. Then she would simply disregard me when I inevitably became ill. One fateful day, she hosted a dinner party. I was dressed in my best clothes and brought out to be shown off to the guests. I was around 9 years old at the time, quite mature for my age and completely exasperated with my mother constantly making me sick. When she presented a fish cutlet, fish mixed with vegetables formed into a ball coated in batter and fried, and offered it to me, I recognized an opportunity. Me speaking loudly and clearly, "I can't eat that, Mom. I'm allergic to fish." Mother, you nonsense, you are not. Eat it now. Me, but I am allergic. I'll get sick and throw up. It's a well-known stereotype that Asian mothers will rarely back down in front of guests, fearing it will make them appear unable to control their children. True to form, my mother grabbed the fish cutlet, forcefully shoved it towards my mouth, and commanded in her most authoritative tone, "Eat." So I ate it. Fast forward about 10 minutes, I approached my mother and gently tugged on her sari to get her attention. Me, "Mom, I really don't feel well." And then it happened. Barf. I vomited all over her, on the expensive carpet, and in full view of all the dinner guests. My mother prided herself on her reputation as a kind, generous, charitable, and deeply religious woman. Therefore, in front of everyone, she was left with no option but to feign sympathy and send me to bed to recover. After that incident, she never forced me to eat fish or seafood again. She wanted to prove the allergy? Well, she proved something alright. Instant karma served with the side of vomit. Hope you enjoyed that story. Have a great day and subscribe for more.